What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to DiabloCast, your Diablo 3 podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dennis Force Duhamel, and I'll actually be flying by the seat of my pants today. I'll be doing this bad boy solo. I was unable to get a hold of Kevin. I lost my cell phone, and sometimes that's how we communicate. So, it's just going to be me today. Oh, well, I'm sure you guys will live. All right. Let's just jump into the news for today. First and foremost, we'll be discussing the reveal of the Diablo 3 opening cinematic that did take place last week during the Spike TV VGAs. Also, some further discussion of the Simplified tooltips. We have gotten a little bit of a rebuttal from Blizzard in terms of a little bit of a defense on their half for why they have decided to go for Simplified tooltips. So we'll be talking about that. The Book of Cain should be shipping out for some of you. If you purchased it through Amazon, it does appear like those have started shipping out, at least this weekend, I believe, is that when that is expected. Also, we'll be looking at the introduction of Battletags, which will be coming very, very soon to those of you in the Diablo 3 beta, and then eventually to the rest of you Blizzard gamers. And lastly, beta patch number 8 was released today. Although the servers are currently down for the beta, we'll be able to talk about the patches. We do have the patch notes, as well as any changes that were implemented with it. All right, guys, so let's start things off by discussing the Diablo 3 opening cinematic. All right, so last week, during the Spike TV VGAs, we got a look at the opening cinematic for Diablo 3. So this is as you expect it. It's just what you're going to be seeing when you start the game. It's actually a pretty cool art book style, drawing battle scene between heaven and hell. And I talked about this during the Purgatory earlier in the week. You know, this is actually the first half of the cinematic we saw during the summertime press event. I attended that with a lot of the community sites, Diablo fans included. Kevin was there as well. And we got to take a look at the first half of it. They didn't actually reveal the second half. But the first time I saw it, I thought it was really cool. There's been a little bit of a backlash from the community. Some people are actually very frustrated by the style choice of Blizzard, basically stating why didn't they go full-on cinematic mode, just like the second half of the cinematic isn't this kind of art book style. And you can quite clearly tell here, based on any previews you've seen of the Book of Cain. This is meant to be reminiscent of the book. It's supposed to be like kind of the battle unfolding on the pages of the Book of Cain. And I like how they tie that in together. Obviously, there's a big push to get people excited for the game. And it's been a long, long time since the game was initially announced. And people, I mean, to be honest, people are starting to tire. They're tiring of the wait. They're tiring of how long it's been taking, the constant, I guess we'll call them delays. Although there obviously has never been an official announcement of the game. People, we come to just expect these things. You hear the faintest of rumors and immediately the whole fan base is like, yes, we're going to hear an announcement. But as we know, that's obviously not the case. And until we actually ever officially hear from Blizzard, anything we hear about possibly a release date announcement is nothing more than hearsay. In fact, specifically mentioning this cinematic, which took place at the VGAs, there was a lot of speculation that we would be hearing a release about the game then, and that obviously didn't happen. But back onto the point, I like how they're tying this into the Book of Cain with the first half of the cinematic and showing that battle scene. I think that's awesome because that's going to get people excited about taking a look at the book, and in turn that will maybe re-spark the excitement about the game. We're still expecting it early in 2012. We still haven't heard anything other than that. It doesn't appear like it's been pushed back any further. So getting people excited by even releasing this little thing here in the Book of Cain, I think that's a good thing. And again, tying that into the cinematic is pretty awesome. And obviously, as you can see, the last half of the cinematic is CGI, and it's all, it's about the interaction between Deckard and Leah, and this all takes place right before you actually start the game, and where the beta starts currently. The falling star happened, which is what we just saw. Looks more like a meteor, of course, and then your hero immediately goes to town, and then you discover what's going on. Now, as you'll probably know, and I'm gonna just say spoiler here, just in case some of you don't. If you have been following my channel, and if you've watched any of Diablo 3 beta videos, you obviously know that Deckard Cain isn't dead, right? I mean, in that cinematic, there's a meteor, it crashes, Deckard Cain is nowhere to be seen. Now, the normal person would perish in such an endeavor, but Deckard Cain, he's hardy, and it's really not a big deal to him. He's like, whatever, just a meteor fell on my head, and I fell into the third level of the cathedral. But, no, he's fine, so don't worry about it. Deckard Cain's still alive. At least for now. I mean, that guy's getting old. I've also read speculation. I thought this was kind of interesting. People speculating that Deckard may actually be tied into Diablo a little more than we may initially think. I mean, what normal person could survive such a thing? I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. You see how large that crater was? Yeah, it's pretty big, pretty crazy. Another complaint, too, I heard about the cinematic, aside from the fact that they took the artistic direction that they did with the first half. They took that kind of art book style battle scene direction. That was obviously, there was a lot of kind of an uproar about that. There were quite a few complaints that I read. But also, the audio, apparently, I mean, people love to nitpick. But when I heard this and I went back and I watched the cinematic, I was like, yeah, that seems a little out of place. The meteor crashes and there's a sound. It does not coincide with the gigantic crater that is left in the cathedral floor. And I thought that was interesting because I didn't really notice it at first. I just hear like a little window shatter. But I mean, there's a huge pit in the middle of the cathedral, and it doesn't sound like a giant meteor created such a pit, but I don't know. I guess I really have never heard a meteor crash up close, so I don't know. Maybe that is how it sounds. How do we know? We're arguing over nothing. All right, so there you go. The Diablo 3 opening cinematic. Just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Clearly, I'm assuming that most of you have seen this. If you're watching the DiabloCast, you must be following close enough to, at the very least, have seen this. But if not, there will be a link available in the video description below, so you can go ahead and take a look at that. All right, so at the VGAs, I did also want to make mention of the fact that right before the cinematic was actually displayed, Mike Morhaime came out, and there was a little bit of discussion as to what's going on, basically with the game, and they were kind of leading up and building up to the showing of the cinematic, kind of the big reveal. And one big thing too that I want to make mention of is, you know, it seems like we should be tired of asking this question, but it keeps coming up. Someone posed the question, do we have a release date for the game yet? And obviously, we got the same textbook answer that we expect, and this is why I kind of bang my head up against the wall when I see these types of questions. It's like, well, why are we still asking this question? Like, it was funny 2 years ago, you know, but at this point, it just seems like, come on, seriously, you're seriously going to ask? They will announce it when they're going to announce it. The response that we got from Morhaime, as you can see here, is as soon as possible. We have pushed it into 2012. Really, at this stage, it's about completing the polish on the game and preparing it for launch. As with any Blizzard game, we really try not to rush these things out. We try to give them time to bake. We're in the beta right now. Of course, we know that. So we have a lot of people out there helping us test the game. I would argue that point. He also stated that they're giving great feedback and people are really excited about it. Yes, people are certainly excited about the game. We're testing to the extent that is possible. I mean, we only have up to a certain level, and we only have the first third of the first act. I mean, the amount of testing that we're actually getting done in the game is pretty minimal. That's why I'm surprised that he made mention of that. That seems pretty interesting to me, because really, as far as we've been told and as far as been evidenced by the lack of content in the beta, I mean, you know, any competent player is going to finish a full run through in about 45 minutes to an hour. And so most of the testing is just all about the client and the downloading and all that stuff. I mean, that's primarily what they're testing. And so to say that we're really helping with balance in the gameplay, I would argue that point. There is obviously something we can do, but we are so limited in the span of abilities that we have and the amount of content that we have access to that there isn't really that much testing going on, at least on the beta portion of things. Internally, sure, they're testing the full game and they've got a lot of stuff that they're doing, and that's great. But to the point, the question of when is the game released yet? Come on, guys, really? I feel this is so unnecessary to ask, and I feel it's almost a huge facepalm moment every time I read that question. You're not going to, like, all of a sudden, they're not just going to be like, oh, great, I'm glad you asked, because we were just about to announce that. That situation is not going to happen, ever. So stop asking the question. We're all anxious. I cannot wait for the game, and don't take this as me being like, oh, Force doesn't really care when the game gets released. Of course I do. But I know that asking for the 10 millionth time isn't going to change whether or not they're going to announce it to us, and it's not going to make the release date come any sooner. I mean, it's silly to even think that it's going to. And even ask that question, I never expect an answer, is ridiculous. And that's why, for the most part, when I see that question, I think, like, oh, they're trying to be funny. But it's no longer funny. That stopped being funny 2 years ago. So we can stop discussing that. All right, so on to Simplified tooltips. Kevin and I, last week in the podcast, we discussed for quite a while, at some pretty significant length, kind of our frustrations with the idea of Simplified tooltips. And I also went on to discuss my understanding as to their decision-making behind it. It's pretty obvious the reasons they're doing it. They're trying to cater the game to a certain audience. There's really no question about that. The casual player is what Blizzard is aiming towards, and that's more and more evident as time goes on with all of their games. I would say with the exception of StarCraft 2, although some people would argue that point, even though they may have added some things to the second iteration of StarCraft, such as auto mining and things like that, which made the game easier. And people will argue that StarCraft in general is much more A-move friendly. People frustrate with a game as competitive as StarCraft, and Blizzard is trying to, in my eyes at least, based on the moves that they've made and things that they've implemented within their games, and we're going to be talking about World of Warcraft as well as Diablo 3 here. As much as we hate to compare those two, they're both RPGs, and although they play much differently and they're set in much different universes, it's about having a character, building up a character, leveling up. That's the general basis of the game. Yes, there's focus on raids and more of a community in World of Warcraft, but let's just go to the bare bones here. It's a game about having a character and acquiring gear for that character. Okay, I think that people can agree with that. So the games are becoming more simplified, and Simplified Tooltips is a great example of this for Diablo 3. They're trying to make it so that people who aren't hardcore gamers are interested in playing this game. There's a huge casual movement in the industry that is unquestionable. It's just a fact. Casual gamers are something that companies are trying to gear more towards. And I'm feeling like where Blizzard is trying to position themselves is kind of a gateway between the casual gamer who plays Facebook games or iOS games, playing games on their tablets and their phones, into the more actual, like PC, obviously PC gaming, possibly even some console gaming Blizzard may be foraying into with Diablo 3. But I'm feeling like Blizzard is setting themselves up as a gateway between those two things, the Farmville players and the hardcore PC gamers. And Blizzard's looking to sit right in between. And again, my statement is being informed by the decisions that Blizzard has made. They've been beating it over our heads now for years now. They've been telling us we're trying to make the games accessible. We want these games to be played by non-gamers. And so when we look at something like Simplified Tooltips, and we are speculating as to what this is going to mean, but you look at the tooltips now, they are very basic. Tooltips are pretty basic right now. It tells you the damage you deal, the resource it costs, and then that's it, right? If there's a cooldown or anything like that. Okay, I don't know what I'm talking about there. But the point is that they're very basic at the moment. And the fact that they're simplifying it even further, my understanding is that, okay, they're likely to be removing some of the numbers. Because how much more simple can you get than it currently is? I can't really think of a way to get much more simple. So clearly there's a backlash amongst the hardcore community. And Blizzard's immediate rebuttal is going to be we're trying to make things more casual friendly. So what we're going to say here, there was a Blizzard quote here as a rebuttal to what people were stating, and I just want to read it off to you, and we're actually going to go ahead and pop this up as a visual as well so people can see it. Just make sure I'm hitting the right darn button. There it is. All right. So just a few counterpoints to some of the discussions that have been raised. Simple tooltips benefit almost everyone. Just because they may not benefit you, they'll indirectly benefit you by helping non-gamers, again, the focus on the casual or the non-gamer, get into the game. Right now, most of us are only thinking about when we play the game, but when the game is released or quite possibly years down the road, you may want to be able to teach your dad, your daughter, your significant other to play. That's something that I could certainly make an argument about, but we will move on a little bit further. Simplified tooltips will certainly help you help when you walk away and they're trying to learn to play for themselves. And we can always hope that they put stuff up on the auction house for way less than it's worth. Mwahaha. A little bit of a joke there. And then the in-game reference guidebook idea for skill and game information has a number of UI issues, but as a player of the game, it's not a great solution because, got a couple of bullet points now, you're not always in-game. More often than not, when you're dissecting a skill at a massive level of detail, you're on a website, forum, discussing things, or you've got an Excel spreadsheet open, or you're getting in some extra Diablo time at a friend's place, or you're at work on a lunch break. A web page lets us present far more organized detail than an in-game book would allow, without ceasing to look like a web browser embedded in a book, which would just look silly. You want tick rates, scaling formulas, proc interactions, etc. I certainly agree with that. If we look at the game at the in game, if they were to implement something like this an extensive, essentially encyclopedia of skills, it could be a little ridiculous. But I can't go as far as to say it's not possible or it's not something they could do, or much more likely it's just something they're pushing off, or they would rather just have everything on the website. And then lastly, the last bullet point, he states that a website allows us to provide the most timely information. If questions come up on the forums, we made a hotfix, we find errors, or come across more information we like to pass along, we can get that information out to players immediately. If it was in-game, it would require a patch. Okay, so just a couple of bullet points behind their reasons behind simplifying the school tips, specifically simplifying the tooltips, specifically to teach non-gamers, such as your dad or your daughter or significant other, to play. I find that interesting. I mean, obviously, as a gaming community, like, we would love to have more gamers, but I don't know that I want people who aren't even interested in. I mean, if they're interested in games, they're going to, go through the efforts to actually learn the game and play the game, right? And simplifying it does make that process easier for the very, very casual players. But I guess it's just like I don't want my girlfriend playing Diablo 3. I'm sorry, that's just not. And I know some people do, and that's great. And if you have a significant other who plays games, then that's fantastic. I guess that's just kind of a preference thing. Like, I'm fine with my girlfriend doing the things that she does, and I'll keep my gaming and my gamers to my friends. But that's also, I suppose, kind of like an elitist attitude. And just because that's what I prefer, that doesn't mean that's what other people prefer. But again, just without any of that opinion stuff, all that opinion stuff aside, just taking a look at this, it's blatantly obvious that, again, they're gearing towards the casual player. And that's all there is to say about that. I mean, we can't really question that anymore. So when we look at decisions that they've made and we're scratching our head and say, why would they do that? They're making the game, they're just making it so easy, and it's so frustrating. Well, come on. Have you not seen it by now? Can you not see this rock rolling down the hill? Has it not picked up enough moss yet? Is it not? I don't even know if these are real statements. The point is that this is a clear direction that Blizzard has been taking for a while, and it's really hard to argue the fact that they're going in this direction, the casual, and I'll call them, again, the gateway between the very casual Farmville player and the hardcore PC gamer. I think that that's where Blizzard's setting themselves up, and I think that should be pretty obvious by now. And why are we still questioning their decisions that lead to this, that lead to the more casual-friendly playstyle? So, simplified tooltips, they are coming, and an in-game encyclopedia of abilities and in-depth description of abilities in-game is very unlikely based on what we saw there, and we're just going to have to go to websites. It's just the way it is. And, I guess it's a good thing that Blizzard themselves will be the ones hosting this content, because much times in the past with many games, if you want in-depth looks at abilities in various games, a lot of times you do have to go to the fan sites. And Blizzard being able to centralize this, I think it's a good thing, because that does make it easier as well for the casual player. A casual player isn't likely to search out for fan sites. And it's not necessarily my position that, this is the way I want Blizzard games to go, because I am not a casual player. I'm a hardcore gamer. I mean, this is what, this is what I do for a living, and my gaming is a lot of what takes up my time and my energy. And so clearly that makes me hardcore. But having more people in the gaming world isn't a bad thing, because more people means more money, means more games, means higher quality games. And you could argue that by saying they're dumbing down the games as well. But, this this is where Blizzard is going. If you are really against casual gaming and you're really against games going in a casual direction, then I'm sorry, but Blizzard, unfortunately, that's where they're headed. So maybe look elsewhere, or maybe just deal with it. Really, I mean, honestly, again, that's we can argue about it until our faces turn blue, and talk about how stupid it is and how we don't want Blizzard to do this, but it's happening. So we have to deal with it. Voice our opinions, though. Obviously a good thing. If you're vehemently against this movement, then say so. Speak up, and maybe that will help things a little bit. We'll see. And again, we do have the hardcore style of games still. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Diablo is necessarily going to be that, but at the high end it is. So there you go. Easy to learn, difficult to master. That's the Blizzard philosophy. Let's see if they get the difficult to master part right. And if they do, I think that many of the complaints that we're hearing now will kind of just fall by the wayside. And that's enough about that. So now we'll be going into discussion about the Book of Cain. The Book of Cain, it's been a headache for people, bouncing back and forth. People have pre-ordered the games, or, all of a sudden the retailer says, hey, you're getting it. Then they say, hey, you're not getting it. Well, taking a look on Reddit today, it does appear like some of the people who did pre-order the Book of Cain are having it shipped out to them through Amazon specifically. I do not know about the other retailers or how any of that is playing in, but take a look if you pre-order through Amazon to see when it's getting shipped out, because it does appear like some people are going to expect it sometime in December. You take a look here, initially at 12:15, and then it got pushed back to 1:12, and now all of a sudden it's at 12:20. So this individual appears to be getting the Book of Cain next week. Again, I have no way of really confirming this. I haven't pre-ordered the book. I did get a copy directly from Blizzard, but nevertheless, if you pre-order the book, go ahead and take a look, see if you're getting it sometime soon. If you haven't yet, I think you should. I really think that any of you people out there who are fans of lore in general, especially in the Diablo universe, this is a great thing to have. I already said this, but again, it's about 140 pages in length. Most of it is lore. There is also a fair amount of artwork sprinkled within it, but it really just kind of gets you right in deep into the lore. And while it doesn't appear like there's a ton of new stuff, if you have read, the Diablo-based novels in the past, there is enough new stuff to keep kind of you intrigued, and there's a good reiteration of all the stuff that we already knew as well. Either way, I think you guys should take a look at the book. I think it's well worth the price. And you would say, Forrest, you got it for free. Well, what do you want me to do? Buy an extra copy? I can't do anything about that. That'd be silly. All right, next up, we have got discussion of battle tags. Battle tags are going to be sort of like the Real ID system, but without actually giving away your specific email address. So if you want to be friends with people across games, if you play multiple Blizzard games, if you play Diablo and Warcraft and StarCraft, and you meet someone and you're like, hey, you're really cool, you also play StarCraft, awesome, let me add you, let me add my battle tag to your list, and now we can see each other across games. Currently the way it works is you can have friends in various games, and while playing that game you will see whenever they're online. Or you can have Real ID friends, which you give them your Real ID email address, the email address that you log into your Blizzard games with, and they can automatically see you across all games. Well, the introduction of battle tags will essentially give you a way to interact with players across all Blizzard titles, but without actually giving them your login email address. And that seems like a no-brainer, most certainly. Obviously your closest friends, I would imagine at least, that you trust them enough to be able to give them your Real ID email address. I just do this for real life friends. I mean, that's, I wouldn't be giving my Real ID address to people that I don't actually know, because if they did something, you can punch them, It's great. But yeah, this is actually really good. I'm glad that they implemented this, because I always wondered, well, this seems kind of silly, because you don't want to give your email address out to everybody, but there are certainly people that you meet in the virtual world that you would like to stay in touch with. So the battle tag system is going to be the way to accomplish this. Now, we'll be starting out with the beta, and the beta patch was recently released for Diablo 3, and while the servers aren't up yet, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, they will be up, I'm assuming later in the day, hopefully, if not by tomorrow morning at least. And with that, we're going to be able to actually acquire our battle tag. Now, if you aren't in the Diablo 3 beta, you can also get your battle tag by actually going on to Battle.net, and there's a whole Q&A system here. You actually just need to head on over to the Diablo 3 community site to see this, and let me actually just bring this up so I can show you guys specifically how you would do that. All right, so firstly, you would just, of course, go to Diablo3.com. Oh, my internet is failing. All right, let's do this here. Okay, so you go to Diablo3.com, and then this is actually going to be right on the main page, the battle tags, and there's just a little bit of a Q&A with it as well. So pretty basic stuff. They just talk about what it is, and it's exactly as I mentioned to it. It's like the Real ID, but without giving out your actual email address. It'll let you talk to friends online across various games. The battle tags will be actually going live with the start of the Diablo 3 launch. So it just says it clearly right there, but you are able to get it now. So if you're in the beta, you can actually access your battle tag once the servers are back up. Other than that, you are able to go onto the Battle.net page. I believe it says it somewhere. I do not know where. Yes, here we go. I'm not in the Diablo 3 beta. Can I choose a battle tag name now anyways? Yes, you must visit the battle tag creation page. You click on that link, and that'll bring you right to there. So you log into your Battle.net account, and then you will be able to go ahead and create your battle tag. But something else to keep in mind is that these are not unique, much like names. There are going to be, you will type it in. You'll type in whatever name you want, so I would type in Force, and then there will be a numerical value attached to it. So it's just like the way StarCraft 2 naming system works right now. It's in fact identical. It's the way the Diablo 3 naming system is going to work sort of as well, and that's just how it is. We aren't looking at unique names. We're just looking at names with 4-digit battle tag codes attached to them. And again, people are going to say, oh, why? I want to be unique. Why do there have to be a million forces as there's likely to be? Well, it's just, that's what they're doing. I don't really know, though, the decision behind it. I don't know in terms of insight. I think that they just want to avoid player frustration when it comes to trying to create an account. And maybe this also is going to play back into the whole casual friendly idea. You know, if you have someone who's trying to get into this game and they're like, all right, now I just need to make a name. And they type in a name, like, oh, it's taken. They type in a second name, oh, it's taken. They type in 10 more names and they're all taken. And all of a sudden the person's like, that's it, I'm just not going to play this game. That's a huge over-exaggeration. Clearly that would not happen. But they're trying to facilitate the playing process, make it as easy as possible so that you get one of their games and you can just hop right in and play it right away, and that's it. You know, don't run into any snags. I mean, that seems like a logical explanation as to why they're doing this. They're just trying to make the whole process as smooth as humanly possible and get people in their games, get them hooked, and that way Blizzard makes money. Cannot forget that they're a business. That is the and that is the bottom line, quite literally and figuratively. The bottom line is about making money, so you get people into your games and invested in them. The easier you can do that, the more likely they are to play it from the get-go, and they're more likely to continue to play the games. And that is just a fact. You cannot argue with that. All right, now the major topic that we will be talking about in today's podcast is actually going to be the recent edition of the Diablo 3 beta patch. Unfortunately, I have had no time with the patch because the servers have been down. I've been trying frantically to log into them throughout the course of the day, but I was unable to do so. And yeah, so we'll have to wait to actually get any footage of it. I would like to do some sort of coverage of the patch. I don't know how much we're going to be able to get done. I mean, there really isn't a lot. We do have some major balance changes, and we'll just actually quickly go over the patch notes here. Firstly, the Battle.net battle tags are now live, as we just discussed. What the battle tags are. They're going to do a character wipe as well, like they've actually been doing with every major beta patch. So sorry if you've been working up to your level 13 beta characters. They are getting cleared yet again. And what can you do about that? Not a whole lot. Achievements have also been temporarily disabled. It does appear like the auction house has also been disabled. At least I read that. Yeah, update right there. There you go. Update. Auction house has also been temporarily disabled, at least for now. We will see if that gets changed eventually at some point. And let's take a look at some class balance. Nothing really major with the exception of one of the monk changes, but we are seeing here is just some basic balance changes to Cleave and Revenge. Also, Demon Hunter got some changes to Bullet Shot, Elemental Arrow, Fan of Knives, Grenades, Hungering Arrow, and Rapid Fire. And biggest thing, though, when it comes to the changes are going to be some changes to the Monk. Specifically, a new skill has been added, Cyclone Strike. So the Monk is picking up a new skill at level 7, costing 75 Spirit. That is a lot. And with it, though, you pull all enemies within 24 yards towards you, followed by a Furious Blast of Energy that deals 275% weapon damage as Holy. So that's a pretty cool new ability, a way for the Monk to get, obviously the Monk is a melee-focused character, to get enemies right up in his face. We have Dashing Strike, which is the ability to close the gap, but having kind of a reverse of that, something like Cyclone Strike, I think that's pretty neat. That's actually very reminiscent of the Barbarian's Ancient Spear. I'm not sure specifically how Cyclone Strike will work, though. I mean, all enemies within 24 yards, that's a lot. I feel like we're going to be looking at a blast wave that kind of just sucks people back, feeling kind of like an undertow, if you will, from the ocean. It's just this big wave that's going to pull people right towards the Monk. So that's pretty interesting. That also feels a lot better than... that feels like it's much, much stronger than the Barbarian's Ancient Spear. But again, obviously far too early to talk balance, and we'll have to see how this actually plays out. Truth is, you don't even have access to Ancient Spear in the beta right now as a Barbarian, so there's really no way for us to tell. And then some small balance changes to Breath of Heaven, Crippling Wave, as well as the mantras. They've received a little bit of a change. Mantras of Conviction, Evasion, Healing, and Retribution. The cooldowns have been removed. They now cost 25 Spirit, and the duration has been increased from 1 minute to 3 minutes. So that actually is a pretty big change. And as you will notice here, Lethal Decoy has been removed. You know, it's funny because when I initially did the playthrough of the beta, Lethal Decoy is an ability that I was kind of scratching my head about. And during the last beta patch, they made a really big change that I was really happy about. They made the Lethal Decoy seem like a much more viable ability. But I guess they decided just overall it wasn't feeling right, and they decided to remove it altogether. I liked they cut the length of the Lethal Decoy down really low so that it would basically explode almost immediately, and they increased the damage by a ton. And I thought that was a great change, but again, they removed it, and in its place we've got now Cyclone Strike. And as you can see, Mantra is obviously much different now as well. So yeah, there you go. And the Wizard, getting a little bit of changes, actually some pretty big changes. Signature spells no longer cost arcane power regardless of their level. So Magic Missile, Electrocute, Shock Pulse, and Spectral Blade, they do not cost anything at all, ever. You don't have to worry about a casting cost for those abilities. Those are just going to be kind of like a basic, not an auto attack so much, but like a basic attack, just like a basic swing of a barbarian. That's essentially what it's considered now. I find that to be an interesting change. With that, they've also reordered the skills from levels 1 to 13. Arcane Orb now unlocks level 3, Disintegrate level 8, Electrocute 13, Shock Pulse 5, Spectral Blade at level 6. Also, some changes to Diamond Skin. Cooldown reduced from 25 to 15, duration reduced from 5 to 3 seconds. A couple of changes to some items here as well. The introduction of magical items in the game has been slowed. So as we initially play the game for the very first time, being able to actually acquire magical items is going to be a much more limited process. You won't be getting as much in the early stage of the game. Now, do read this as it is. The introduction of magical items has been slowed. This doesn't mean that across the board magical items have been, the drop rate has been reduced. It just means that when you first start the game, we won't be picking up nearly as many magical items. That's okay. I'm okay with that. A little bit of a buff to baby quills. The demon health has been increased from 1% to 25% of normal quill beast health, so they won't die quite as quickly. And then we saw some affix changes. Arcane Enchanted will now appear up at level 7 as opposed to level 1, so you won't be seeing them nearly as early. The Mortar ability is actually no longer in the beta content, as it will be coming later in the game, so past level 13. Although the content itself technically goes up to level 8 and 9 with an initial playthrough. That's about where your character is. So it'll be the past level 9 content that we'll be seeing the Mortar abilities. So again, no longer in the beta. And Plagued Poison Cloud duration reduced from 12 seconds to 9 seconds. I guess they felt like it was lingering just a bit too long. And then wrapping things up here, quest and events. All quest and events have had their item and recipe rewards moved and will now only award gold and experience on completion. So now you only, from quest, get gold and experience. There are no longer item rewards from quest. That's an interesting change. I guess I'm okay with that. I mean, we don't expect amazing gear to be coming from quest anyways. The quests are not a big focus of the Diablo universe. I think that making it so that quests no longer reward gear, it just makes that even more so the case. You don't care as much about quest because gear is the main focus of the game. Now, with that stated, it does not affect treasure received from an event object such as Jar of Souls, but just specifically quests that you get from NPCs. And then gold rewards from quests have received a tuning pass. It's hard to judge what that is. Does that mean more or less gold? We'll have to take a look once the beta actually goes live, and we'll take a look at the rewards and compare it to when it was before the patch. And lastly, some changes to the user interface. The options in the UI have had several improvements, but remains still a work in progress. So the user interface is still a work in progress. And although I haven't been able to log into the servers, even the initial login screen, I noticed some changes to the UI. So that's pretty cool. Just a little bit of improvements there. Friends list has been redesigned to be smaller and more accessible on other menus and screens. And the banner customization menu has been reworked to improve navigation and usability. And then lastly, fire gate damage has been reduced. Okay. All right, so those are the patch changes. Obviously, the biggest things are going to be, we did see some pretty major changes to the monk there, as well as the wizard. And besides that, some relatively basic stuff. Nothing really gigantic here for the barbarian or the demon hunter. And nothing for the Witch Doctor. He gets left out of this patch. So there you go. That is the most recent patch. Although if you're not in the beta, I'm sure it doesn't matter too much to you. I like to keep you guys up to date on any changes that have been taking place within the game, even though there's still probably many, many more to go before we actually get to release. And then lastly, as always, guys, I like to wrap things up with some community questions. This has been a long ride when you're talking all by yourself. Some community questions here from Facebook. And so whenever we do DiabloCast every Friday, of course, and if you would like to get some questions done, eventually at some point throughout the day, usually about a half hour to an hour, before I record DiabloCast, which is typically in the early stage of the afternoon EST, I'll go on my Facebook fan page and I'll say, hey, I got DiabloCast recording soon, leave some questions. And that is where you can actually leave questions if you would like some things answered. That is the best place to be able to actually get some questions through to me, because that's really the only way that I'm actually going to be able to see anything to read. Whenever we do the live chat, the live section is just giant spam, and it's very hard, very, very hard to read it. So here we go. First question coming from Khalid. Is it going to be like old Diablo games where you finish the story and nothing new? Or is it going to be like WoW with new missions and expansions? So something we've touched on in the past, Diablo is all about the randomness. You're not getting tons of new content all the time. While they do have plans for the end game that are currently unrevealed, aside from the new difficulty, you play the same acts over throughout all the difficulties. So you start normal, nightmare, hell, and then now the addition of Inferno. Now Inferno has been promised, put that in quotes, it's been promised to be a much, much more difficult experience than we've ever had in the past. And with that, we can expect, with more difficulty, it should also mean more longevity to it. And hopefully that's the case. Hopefully it takes quite a while before anyone is actually clearing Inferno. That's the goal anyways. But no, it's new. It's the same. Diablo isn't about getting a new dungeon every 3 months. It's not about these patches that you're going to add a whole new zone. Expansions, there will be new zones. We'll probably expect a new act for every expansion that Diablo 3 has. But it's much different than World of Warcraft. And if you're hoping for a game like WoW and Diablo when it comes to that sense of the end game, you will be disappointed. It's, the level layout is about randomization, so it is something new in a sense. While it's always going to be the same typical zone, it should have a new feel to it, and that's what randomization is supposed to do, and that's how the game is built, and that's it. So don't expect something like WoW when it comes to end game content, because Diablo will not have that. Even if they add something new and exciting, it's not going to be like what you see from WoW in terms of new content every new major patch. It's just not it's not Diablo. So next question coming from Fixian. Cyclone Strike, good improvement over Lethal Decoy, or an Inferno skill mistake? Attracting enemies and then initiating an attack may prove to be scary. That's an interesting point. It's certainly a much different ability, and it doesn't even fill the same role. So we look at the removal of Lethal Decoy and the addition of Cyclone Strike, and we ask ourselves, okay, was Cyclone Strike meant to replace Lethal Decoy? Now, it obviously appears to have replaced Lethal Decoy because Lethal Decoy is not here, and we got the addition of Cyclone Strike. But these two things are fundamentally much, much different. As I stated, Cyclone Strike is a lot like the Ancient Spear for the Barbarian, and nothing like Lethal Decoy. Lethal Decoy pulled enemies away from you as it had an aggro sort of thing attached to it. It drawed enemies towards it, and then it exploded for some damage. Whereas the new edition of Cyclone Strike is just like a get over here kind of ability, So I don't think that they were meant to replace each other in the sense of filling the same role, because it's quite clear that they don't. And whether or not it's a mistake, I don't know. If Cyclone Strike is something you don't feel like you use, then you won't use it. Again, in Diablo, we only have access to so many abilities, so it's not like you can just use everything. It's not like you have to use Cyclone Strike just because Lethal Decoy was removed. You're not now forced to use Cyclone Strike. If you don't like it, don't use it. I guess I can see how it'd be weird, but also if you're building a tanky monk, whatever that may be, maybe like an evasion style monk or something like that, then having something like Cyclone Strike would be good to pull it off of your allies who might be a little bit squishier, Next question from Lucas. Theory crafting, some release dates, go. And my answer to that is no. Not going to waste my time. I will also not waste your time. There's really nothing to talk about. And continuously asking that question, just getting annoying, so please stop it. Okay, next. Question from Kyle, and this will be actually the last question for today. Do you really think that one person playing D3, even with a couple of accounts, could reasonably come out ahead in the auction house? Will the hours needed to grind really pay off? How so? Well, it seems very unlikely, to be frank, that Diablo is such a game of luck that I don't see people making a real income. Because I think that's really where Kyle's question. I think that's really where your question's coming from. Hey, are you if you were to play in a lot of accounts, if you're to multi-box, can you make some decent money off the auction house? I think the only real money to be made on the auction house will be very random. You will find one of the most amazing pieces of gear in the game, you'll put it up in the auction house, and it'll probably sell for a couple $100s. I definitely see the high-end items possibly going for that much. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that that's a possibility. I think that the higher-end items, the very, very rare items, at least for the first couple of years, will probably sell for a couple $100s. But that's nothing you can guarantee, even by multi-boxing. And farmers, there will be companies and there will be farmers that do this type of things, and they will multi-box all day, every day. And they will get they obviously they increase their chances of finding stuff, but the chances are so small of finding these high-end items. These high-end items are so very rare that even with that, even though you're increasing your chances, you're multiplying your chances effectively with every account that you're running simultaneously, that doesn't necessarily mean that things are guaranteed. I just think it's going to be a situation where some people will get really lucky. Excuse me. Some people will get really lucky and they'll be able to make some extra money. But making an income off of this game, it just doesn't seem reasonable. I don't think that the market is going to allow for it. So many people will be trying to do the same thing. It's going to drive prices down, down, down. And then eventually people will realize, okay, there's really not a lot of money to be made. Yes, people will play the system. And yes, people will do things like buy out all of the same item and then relist them all at a higher price, as much as you reasonably can. In fact, I don't even know if that's possible given the sheer size. These auction houses are being basically placed by region or by currency. It's too large of a size, I think, to be able to corner the market. Although it's possible, I'm not gonna rule it out. I don't know. It seems like it's unlikely to me, but someone may do it to some extent. But being able to make a consistent regular income off of Diablo seems like it won't really happen. I think that if you're lucky and you find an amazing piece of gear and you do decide to sell it, because that's the other thing to keep in mind too. Just because you find this piece of gear and it's unbelievable, who says you're even going to consider selling it? Don't you want it for your character? What about one of your friends? And that's going to be an interesting question that will come up quite a bit. That's quite evident to me. I guarantee there will be situations where someone will find a piece of gear and it'll be amazing, and they'll look on the auction house and a comparable piece of gear will be selling for, like, let's say $100. And then there's the decision to be made, right? Do I sell this or do I use it? Or how about my best friend who plays a character who could utilize this piece of gear? Do I give it to him? Something that's good is that without any bound gear, you can use it, and then if you find something better, you can sell it. Or you can use it for X amount of time, and if you decide, hey, I don't really need it so much, I'm taking my character in a different direction, I'm going to try a new character, whatever, you could just pawn it off on the auction house. Although it may be of less value by that time, who knows, So that's it's pretty interesting, but in my personal opinion, I don't really think that there will be a ton of money to be made on the auction house, although again, it is possible. And with that, my friends, that is going to do it for questions for today, and that is going to wrap up today's DiabloCast. As always, I, of course, want to thank you so much for watching. It's been a little bit interesting podcast here. A little bit, I won't call it an experiment. I just was unable to get a hold of Kevin, but I don't know. I don't mind talking by myself for an hour. If it comes down to this again in the future, I'd say I darn well look forward to it. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of DiabloCast. It's been nice chatting with you guys about the game. Really excited as we get closer to 2012 to hearing more about the game and hopefully getting a release date at some point, but we are not going to ask the question, when's the release date? All right, guys, thanks again so much. This has been Forrest. Please stay tuned next week for another episode of DiabloCast and next Monday for another episode of Purgatory. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.